Well, plus his travel business is
Oh, yeah.
just phenomenal.
And I think he personally escorts too.
I don't know if I don't know if he personally does. He's got, you know, if you watch his show on PBS, he goes to all these places that he goes. He has guides that meet him there.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, those are so interesting. And does a really good job of talking about the history and, you know, not just the sites. He gives you a
He
good.
makes this high and low, mostly medium to low, really. Travel places to stay rather than $700 a night.
Right.
Looking, you know, Amalfi Coast.
Yep.
You know, you're paying, you know, 104 or 99 or whatever in Italy. And in London, you're getting something cheap for 500 a night, you know.
And he does the bed and breakfast, and he doesn't use Airbnb, but he uses the bed and breakfast, which he's got of course, they're in his guidebook, so I'm sure they're paying a fee. That's part of the money-making thing, but they're still really nice places and interesting people that run them.
He recommended a place in Italy, this last time I went over there, and it was great. It was like being in a palazzo, but it wasn't super expensive.
Right.
You know, had breakfast every morning and that kind of stuff. And little tiny, you know, postage stamp entrance and lobby hotel, and then blah, 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 blah. But really neat. Right in Rome on the Via del Corso.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I think we're not too eager to go to Rome or Greece, because I traveled through there when I was got out of school.
Earlier in your life.
But there's really a tremendous difference between the northern personality and the southern personality. And the southern personalities are just real hands-on, lots of gestures. Everybody wants to be touching and real close to each other. So once you get into Italy and Greece and places like that, people are excitable and everything else. And if you're heading north toward Germany or Scandinavia, it's like the handshake and everybody keeps the normal distance.
Northern Italy is
Yeah.
like that because of I think probably the Austrian influence,
Right.
and Switzerland, Swiss influence on Northern Italy, but they're that way. They're more standoffish and they're not, you know, their cooking's different and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of where you feel comfortable, and it's just traveling through hitchhiking was pretty interesting. So
Well, if I read right, there's just a few cruises that are starting up now, and the only ones overseas, basically, that I could see in the big consolidated that I subscribed to Vacations to Go were Greek Isles and Athens. That was it.
No.
Nothing else was open.
no, I'm sure we used the one that came
In Turkey. In Turkey,
I wouldn't go to Turkey now for you, I've like heard of one.
I don't like him either. And
Yeah,
I'm
he's
not-
scary, he's scary to me, and I wouldn't
I'm
travel.
afraid I get caught over there. And the Turks are such nice people, but boy, he isn't.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go there. It's an awful lot of places are cut off for me now.
No, I have the same feeling about Erdogan and all of Turkey. And I always wanted to do that turquoise coastline.
Uh-huh.
You know, and
Well, I wouldn't go to Israel either, because I disagree so much that I have no business visiting their country, because I really disagree with them so much.
and it's open now. That's another
Is it
fact
really?
that, believe it
Well,
or not,
I just have
Jordan,
never,
Israel,
and even a trip that he would stop there, I just always avoided.
well, they're all stopping in Tel Aviv and somewhere else. There aren't many places. I don't think Egypt's open yet. But I was curious, so I just got in and was poking around looking at what cruises they had listed and where they were going. But
Some of the cruises, though, since they can't leave from Miami now,
they're all
they're going to the Bahamas, and
Yes.
I mean, you have to fly to the Bahamas
You
to
have to
get on
fly
the
to San
service
Juan.
and to go, yeah.
Well, that's U.S. really, but you have to fly somewhere in the Bahamas.
But they are making sure that everybody on their
wonder
cruise
if,
has shots, though.
But Jenna Powell doesn't like passports. She introduced the bill last week in the Ohio legislature to get rid of passports for immunization because it's discriminatory and violates her right. So, you know, the religious exemption and all that stuff for immunizations that's in the revised code wasn't enough. They got nervous when they heard that word passport. And I bet you that's a passport. And I bet you that's because it's being talked about in Fox News. And that makes them nervous and I'm sure it keeps Jenna.
Who we got, Lloyd?
Let's see, the first two is,
She makes me nervous.
She's already early. It's fucking harassing her, but not very nice.
15. Really?
Yes.
Mostly,
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, we're getting so chatty we missed the ending of the bells. So, welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison. A beautiful sunny day, spring day. They said they were going to have frost last night, and I forgot to bring my plants in. Luckily, it didn't frost where I live, so because I just had bought a whole bunch of them at Menards and set them out, getting them ready to go. Welcome. As we proclaim worth, this is by Dan Lambert. You are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You are welcome here to join us as we proclaim worth in our spiritual journeys. You are welcome to join us as we sing songs. We would love to have you join us as we sing songs that uplift our very beings. You are welcome to join us in community as we learn, live, and love together. All are welcome as we worship that which gives us each meaning and value. No matter what you call this building, this hour, or this gathering of people, we worship as one body, illuminated by the light of the chalice. Do we have any announcements?
I just wanted to mention that the board will not be meeting this month at its regular time, which would have been Tuesday.
Right.
But we're not meeting, and we will schedule a special meeting for some project planning, and I will post that with our weekly UU updates.
Okay.
It'll probably be sometime in early May, but we'll give advance notice of that meeting.
And everybody is welcome to that. Our special project is, we kind of borrowed this idea from El Dorado. We're going to try and do some potting, buy some plants, put them in pots, and take them out to our shut-ins and people who just aren't able to get here because of the virus or because of personal situations where they're not able to travel. We want them to know that we remember them and we value their existence, and we want to support them in any way possible. Our slide thing, if you haven't figured it out, B-17, I'm pretty eclectic, so we're going to go all over the map here. If you know anything about B-17s, you can go to the Air Force Museum. Memphis Belle has been rebuilt and is now on display at the Air Force Museum. Pretty interesting observation. And they're still flying B-17s. The Confederate Air Force or any of the volunteer groups. The little video I have at the end is from the Richmond airport. I was able to get to that and go through the actual plane itself. If I wasn't such a chicken and had a little more money, you can actually take a flight trip for $400, which would be pretty scary because they are tiny and they are 1942 or 43 vintage. Yeah. So, and there have been a few crashes, so I think I'll just watch somebody else fly it, but it's still fun to watch it go by. All right, our prelude, Nightingale Sang. blessed way to start a blessed day or any day. Our chalice lighting is a flame to light our path. This is by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets of the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Let me go back to the other picture. We'll get you a little narration as we go along. This is the front of the B-17. It was known as the Flying Fortress. And the reason it had, they said 13, I counted 14 guns, and they were 50 caliber machine guns, which were huge guns for that day and age. And that was the only way they were able to defend themselves as they flew over Germany, which would, at the beginning of the war, there were no fighter planes that were able to accompany them, so they were completely at the mercy of the German fighter planes during the defense. So we'll kind of look at these as we go along. This is the pilot's seat. Looks like a 1944 Ford, doesn't it? Pretty amazing. And it's pretty incredible to get up in there. It is tight quarters. And I know people have grown since the 40s because I'm 6 foot and weigh like 240 and I could barely get through a lot of those places. Our opening hymn is 120. and it's kind of amazing to see the transition. This was from a Genevan Psalter in 1551. The words come from 1886 to 1962. They've been slightly updated. The meaning is clear, but the phraseology is definitely strange. This is the bombardier's position, which is the plexiglass nose cone that you can see right through. That's a pretty amazing position too. And the bombardier had control of, you can see on the right and the left, there's a machine gun that sticks out of each side. And there are also 2 machine guns and a little turret down underneath that he controls. The reason there are so many machine guns in the front, they didn't start out that way at the beginning of the war. I think there was just 1 at the front. But they found out, well, the Germans actually figured out in the Flying Fortress, the most undefensible place and the easiest way to attack them was from the front. So they would fly down from the top and fly into the front and shoot up at the pilot and the co-pilot. And so to counteract that, they started putting more armament in the front end. And that it didn't solve the problem, but it definitely alleviated it a little bit. Okay, affirmation. A House for Our Dreams by Dory J. Summers. We, all of us, build houses for our dreams, the masonry and lumber, glass and tiles, a solid form wherein we see our hopes, a shelter and a protection for our growth. This house shall be a dwelling place for courage, for integrity, for love, engendered and nourished by a family that speaks of we and means all humankind. These walls shall represent the privacy and dignity of individuals, the open doors, a welcome to all peoples, all ages, and all generations. The windows shall keep the light of inquiry illumining from the outside and within. May all words spoken here be born of love, and energy rekindle in the hearts of those who dreamed this house and plied the tools, and paid the price to actualize the dream. May dreaming never cease for those within who know the world to be a troubled place, but dare to struggle with imperfectness toward that brighter hope, that better day. Let memories add warmth, a heritage, a quilted patchwork stitched with history, of kindliness, of daring for the good, of funny moments, jokes and smiles, and tears. This is a precious place as every home that shelters those who love and strive and share. Its blessing is in lives that meet within, in living, learning, caring, sheltered here. All right. Our next slide, you're getting quite a history lesson today. Sorry if this is not your thing, but indulge me, please. This is the Norden bomb site. Prior to this time, when they bombed, which is, I hate to talk about bombing and killing people from the air, but when they bombed from the air, like in the First World War, they just took a bomb in the little single-engine biplanes, the Spad and the Fokker. They just threw a bomb over the side, and wherever it landed, kind of higgledy-piggledy is where it landed. As they advanced, as science always seems to advance in the techniques of killing people, the guy named Norden invented a site which took into consideration the wind, the altitude, the conditions below, the fog and everything else, and made it so they could almost precisely drop a whole stick of bombs. This plane didn't drop just one bomb, it dropped like 20 or 30 or 40 depending on the size, and have them land specifically where they were supposed to, which really helped in eliminating some of the collateral damage. When you just indiscriminately throw bombs on places, you're bombing civilian places, which in the beginning of the war was not the intention. Although by the end of the war, as we see with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they didn't seem to make a choice between civilian and military. They bombed everything that was there. So, children's story. The book is Love Your Neighbor. It's got a lot of short stories, so we'll be using it again. And this is the actual title story, Love Your Neighbor. 2 rabbits, Isa is the one rabbit, and his neighbor was Kobo. Isa lived in a lovely hutch in farm country. It was warm in the winter, and the roof kept the rooms dry on rainy days. On the other side of the split rail fence lived Kobo, who unfortunately was not as well off as his neighbor. Kobo's burrow was tiny, but he thought of it as cozy. While it wasn't exactly the warmest place to spend cold evenings, he felt it was good enough for him. Day after day, the two rabbits went to their fields to work. Isa worked the soil diligently. Lucky for him, his garden was very fertile. His lettuce sprouted large green leaves, and his carrots were as big as baseball bats. Kobo's ground wasn't so fertile. It was slightly sandy and full of rocks. No matter how hard he worked, Kobo managed to grow only enough to get by. His lettuce leaves were small, and his carrots looked more like shriveled pickles. One day, Isa went looking in his barn for an axe to cut down an overgrown bush. When he opened his toolbox, he found his hammer, his screwdriver, his nails, and his pliers. But his axe wasn't anywhere to be found. It was gone. Isa thought for a second. I know where that axe is, he said. Since Isa had a suspicious nature, he was certain that Kobo had taken his axe. Of course, Isa had no proof of this. Nevertheless, he was certain that his neighbor was a thief. And there you can see irascible Isa looking through his toolbox. And how many of us have been in that position? As Isa worked, he looked across his field to spy on his neighbor. Whenever he saw Kobo, he became more convinced that he was right. That rabbit has the look of a thief, he muttered. Why, he hops like a thief. He holds his head like a thief, and his hands. Hello, Isa, Kobo called to him. Isa grumbled a reply. He said to himself. He even talks like a thief. All summer long, Isa watched Kobo and grew angrier and angrier. As the days grew shorter and winter came, Isa sat by his fire and brooded. I'll catch that thief yet, Isa said. Yes, I will. The winter snow melted and the trees were once more green with leaves. It was spring and the season to work the field again. Isa took a hoe from his toolbox to till the soil. Still no axe, he muttered. While digging, Isa felt the blade of his hoe strike something. Bending over, he saw a bit of steel sticking up from the soil. It was his axe. Isa suddenly remembered that he had left the axe in the field the year before. He had rushed into his house when a terrible rainstorm struck. The storm must have buried the axe in the muddy soil. Hi, Isa, Kobo crawled from across the way. Isa looked at his neighbor and thought, my, how he has changed. It was a funny thing, but Kobo no longer looked like a thief to Isa. His paws didn't look as if they were ready to snatch something that didn't belong to him. Now Isa's neighbor appeared no different than any other rabbit. He hopped like a good rabbit and spoke decently too. Isa returned to his hutch, relieved to have such an honest neighbor. Some blame others for their own errors. Why do you think that Kobo looked like a thief to Isa at one time, and then looked like an honest rabbit to Isa the next year? Good story. Pay attention. Excuse me. Do we have any joys or concerns?
I just have a quick comment.
Yes.
Your slide, the northern bomb site.
Yes.
Now you were saying that inappropriate bomb.
Yes.
Maybe that do not touch sign on it serves a higher message. Don't touch the bomb site, don't bomb.
For the future, don't touch the bomb
Yeah.
site. The secrecy surrounding this was unbelievable. The bombardiers, the people that trained to use it, there was like a death penalty if you talk about it to anybody, explained anything about how it worked, even the other crew members didn't know how it worked. It was a secret completely known to bombardiers only. And there was a whole big thing about if the plane was shot down, they were supposed to destroy the bomb site before it crashed. And evidently they were pretty successful because, let me see if I can remember, the Flying Fortress was not exactly a fort over Germany during World War II. On one mission to, I think it was Sagerfeld, I can't remember the name of the place because they bombed everywhere in Germany. Over 300 planes left on the mission. only 33 returned undamaged, and a huge number of them were shot down. Of the 2,500 crew members that went out, 650 did not come back. This is just one mission. Out of 2,500, 650 didn't come back. Now, some of those were taken prisoner and were released at the end of the war. But the numbers of attrition that these gentlemen suffered during that, imagine getting up and going onto that plane to fly off to a mission when huge percentages of your comrades didn't come back or came back in pieces, was pretty incredible. The bravery involved there was pretty amazing. Okay, our message. And this plane is the aluminum Overcast. There's two that I know of that I've seen. I've seen both of them, one at Richmond and one to a little airport in Indiana, not Richmond, but close to it. And I can't remember the name of the Shoo Shoo Baby, I think was that one. But this is the aluminum Overcast, and they're a lot of fun to go see. Our message is, what is your great vow? This is by the Reverend Meredith Garman, who is the pastor, or was when this was written, at White Plains, New York, some time ago, so I hope he's still there. And he is generous enough to put his sermons online. I think it's called The Liberal Pulpit, which is why I gravitate to it. And I think he's a pretty good writer. The Stoic philosophers emphasize not worrying about what isn't in your control. And that is such an important wisdom, to let go of concern that isn't in your control. But what is in your control? There is a further wisdom that recognizes that any control is ultimately an illusion. Your thoughts? Nope. Your thoughts are not in your control. Try sitting very still and very quiet, lowering your eyelids so they are almost but not quite shut, gazing downwards at a 45-degree angle and bringing all your awareness to something in the present, noticing the minute details of the sensations of breathing in and breathing out. You will soon notice that a thought will intrude. Your mind will wander off from the assignment you have given it. If any of you have tried meditation, this is what meditation is. They say, clear your mind. The Buddhists will give you a mantra, a word to say over and over again. Some people just say, concentrate on your breathing. Try it sometime if you haven't yet and see how hard it is to keep those thoughts in control. I need to do my laundry soon. So-and-so was curt with me. What was that about? Perhaps I'll start a garden. I wonder if that movie theater is going to be reopening soon. What's for lunch? You didn't ask for these thoughts. You didn't choose them. They just popped up. And if your thoughts aren't in your control, then can the actions that flow from the thoughts be? They certainly seem to be in our control, and it's important that they seem to be. The illusion is a necessary one, but it is an illusion nonetheless. Spiritual deepening involves gradually seeing through the illusion of control. Sages in many times and places have recognized that we are not in control. Recently, scientific methods have confirmed it. Experiments in the mid-1980s showed that the motor signal is headed to the muscle several hundred milliseconds before we become conscious of it. We have already begun the action before the apparatus of conscious decision-making comes online. Have you noticed that? When you're reaching for your toothbrush or your fork or the remote control on the TV, it's like your hand is already moving before your mind is saying, I'm going to change the station. For most of day-to-day life, consciousness isn't deciding what to do. Consciousness' job is to come along after the fact, notice what we're doing, and make up a story about how we're doing what we're doing is what we meant to do. All day long it's going, I meant to do that. Oh yeah, I meant to do that too. But the meaning to do it trails the meaning, the beginning of doing it. Our brains create a running commentary on whatever we are doing, even though the interpreter module has no access to the real causes or motives of our behavior. That's quite a striking thought. So keep that in mind, and you can think about whether you agree or disagree. In these experiments, they flash the word walk as part of a visual field that would be seen only by the right hemisphere. It's the left hemisphere that processes language consciously. So subjects were not even conscious of seeing the word. Yet many of them would stand and walk away. When asked why they were getting up, subjects had no problem giving a reason. I'm going to get something to drink, they might say, or I'm going to the bathroom. Our inner interpreter module is good at making up explanations, but not at knowing why it has done so. What they did was flash a subliminal message that was so fast that the brain never actually consciously recognized that it was there that said walk. And a bunch of people got up and walked away without even knowing why they were doing it and without consciously knowing. But their mind then made up a reason why they were doing it. If I'm getting up and walking away, there must be a reason. I'm thirsty, I need to go to the bathroom, I wanted to talk to somebody. Language centers and neocortex notice my behavior, and they make up a story about this character named Meredith, who's the author, who is heroic, yet with certain endearing foibles. At each moment of the day, this Meredith can be found deliberately and intentionally acting. Whatever he is doing is a reasonable part of his pursuit of a reasonable purpose. This is an after-the-fact story. The behavior comes first, we now know. And people of great spiritual awareness have recognized this long before any of these scientists came along, that this story of the self was a fabrication. With spiritual development and seeing through the illusion of control comes an increased appreciation of grace, the wonder, the beauty, the abundance that cannot be earned or deserved, decreased worry and anxiety from trying to control outcomes, decreased attachment to the ego's story about either accomplishments or failures, and a decreased interest in blaming the self or others. Why would our brains be built to generate this illusion of control? One plausible suggestion is that the conscious feeling of intent is simply a marker indicating that we own the action. This marker is very important so that our episodic memory shows whether actions were ours or just happened. The memory of an event that comes from me influences my neurons in the future. We do learn from our actions and their results. If I get a pain from something I did, my neural wiring makes me less likely to do that again. But if the pain just happened, it was apparently not a result of some peculiar behavior of mine, the effects on my wiring are different. In other words, if you reached and touched a hot stove and you noticed the stove was red before you touched it, your brain's going to say, don't do that again. But if you're just walking through and the stove was the normal color and you put your hand down on it and it burns you, then you're going to say that was an accident. There was no way I could have perceived that in the future, and there's no way I can protect myself from doing it again. What we call volition is not a generator of behavior, but only a perception that a behavior is ours. The illusion that intentions precede and determine action then is a byproduct of the way our brain learns from experience. We are not in control. And yet, intentions matter. It matters that we set an intention for what we are going to do today, what we are going to do this week, or what we are going to do with our life. There is a distinction to be made between the after-the-fact rationalization of our impulses of the moment versus the large overarching story of the purpose of lives. Both, it would seem, are fabricated stories, but the overarching story has the power to feed back down into those subconscious places that generate particular behaviors. The conscious brain has no idea what's going on in the subconscious, so the conscious brain just makes up a story. Yet the subconscious is listening to that story, and it starts taking it into account. It listens with a skeptical ear at first, but if the story is referenced repeatedly, the subconscious wiring adjusts. Say one time you did a favor for someone. Maybe you did it for purely self-interested reasons, but you happen to have been asked why you did it, and you fabricated a story. Not from any intent to deceive, but because it's the job of the conscious brain to invent rationalizations. And say your story was that you care about the well-being of others. Subconscious brain was listening to that story. It was not entirely sure whether to believe what it heard, but it made a note, a sort of little But if it so happens that you have another occasion to tell that story about yourself, then the story gets reinforced a little more. What began, as all our explanations of behavior do, as an after-the-fact rationalization, can eventually become an actual driving force. Having spent a year at a place called the Great Vow Zen Monastery, I've had a chance to reflect about the vows in our lives, the overarching stories of our commitments and values that come to be our guiding forces. We can have a vow of the moment, like vowing to get dinner on the table, but the understanding vow is what you get to keep asking why. As opposed to an adapted example from Jan Chosen Bay's The Vow-Powered Life, a youth vows to become the highest scoring player on her basketball team. If she happens to be asked, or asked herself, a series of why questions, there are various directions she might go. She might want to impress a certain prospective mate she has her eye on. Why? Again, there are various possible answers. Perhaps because I eventually want to have a long, happy marriage like my grandparents had. Why? Because I want a deep, lasting connection to another human being. Why? To learn to love people genuinely and also myself. And this is where the why questions stop. We recognize implicitly that we have reached an ultimate. To love other people genuinely and also myself. That is the ultimate question. The series of why questions might have taken us down a different path to a different ultimate. She might have instead said that she wanted to be her team's top scorer in order to get a scholarship to college that would be otherwise unaffordable. Why does she want to go to college? She might say to get a good job, or she might say to learn about international politics, and those would each lead to a different ultimate. Whatever it might be, when you get to the ultimate that puts a stop to further why questions, that's your great vow. When our young basketball player first formed her determination to be her team's top scorer, there were almost certainly a variety of different urges at work. As my father used to say to me, son, nobody ever did anything only for one reason. If subjected to the pressure of why questions, she'll select rationales that sound good at the time. Yet the subconscious is listening to what the conscious brain makes up. If the story is one that she sticks to, it will gradually become a true guide. The great vow is your personal mission. Most of us are used to mission statements for institutions, companies, congregations, nonprofit organizations, etc. But do you have a mission statement for your life? If you do, have you articulated your great vow? If we are never pressed for an ultimate purpose, then we can spend our lives pulled this way and that by the forces of the moment. So it is important to pursue that series of why questions. Get down to an ultimate that feels right and stick to it. Keep repeating it, especially as an explanation for something you are doing to strengthen the link between your words and your actions. Each time you sincerely say it, you reinforce your orientation towards realizing what world you dream. Thoughts? Agreements? Disagreements? You can tell he went to a Zen monastery. It's pretty Zen-oriented, but I think there is a definite kernel of truth there that we kind of rationalize what we say. But even the self-help books will tell you, and if you've watched the TV program Mom, there was a few in the first couple of years where she was trying to be a recovering alcoholic and she was playing a tape in her car that said, you are smart, you are responsible, you are capable, and just repeated it over and over again. There is a certain sense of self-learning about telling yourself these things, and the kind of simple educational pieces will tell you just to repeat something like, you are smart, you are educated, you are capable. It can go deeper than that. You can be a good person, you can be a better person if you believe that you can be a better person. Anything? Okay. Our offering. Our offering statement is, we give these gifts freely, we receive these gifts gratefully, we dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for our planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, and loving one another. As usual, you're invited to put something in the plate or take something out of the plate. If you're watching from the distant areas, their website will have a site where you can donate money, or you can just drop an envelope under the door if you so care to do. I forgot the first Sunday of the month we usually do the sharing with the community. I forgot to mention that, so we'll pick that up again next month. And if I forget, as I am wont to do, somebody remind me. First Sunday of the month, you can either bring food, or we have a fish plate here that you can donate into fish. Closing hymn is 115. God of grace and God of glory, rich in things and poor in soul, grant us wisdom, grant us courage, make thy peace our daily goal. Make thy peace our daily goal. Amen.
Amen.
Amen, yes. Our closing words are Blessed is the Path by Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. I need 3 arms. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. This is the engine. These are Wright engines. They were actually produced from Dayton. Boeing built the plane. All the training and testing and everything was done at Wright Field. At that time, it was not Wright-Patterson, it was Wright Field, which you can imagine, that little tiny airfield down there. This is one of the crews of the Lotta Stern. I'm assuming that's the guy's wife or girlfriend. Nose art was quite a thing with bombers and fighters in World War II. There's entire books on that was pretty amazing. These are the brave guys who went up, and many of whom didn't come back. And this is why they called it also the Flying Fortress. It could suffer incredible damage and still fly and still come back. Unlike almost any other plane, the B-17 was notorious for being able to be shot to pieces and still get its crew back on it. Okay, well, I'll do the last thing and then we'll do the postlude. This is the aluminum Overcast in Richmond. We got time, so I'm going to get you the whole thing. History right before your very eyes.
Tim, did you take that picture?
Yes. Yeah, I really enjoy going to those things. So, okay, let's go back up to the top. And it's time for our postlude.
I want to tell you a little bit about this.
Good.
I'm going to play Shall We Gather at the River, which you probably all know.
What is it?
Shall We Gather at
Shall we gather at the river? Okay.
And in 2014, my dear friend Terry Fryman gave me this piece to share with all of you. And I had played it in 2015, haven't played it since. And when looking through something to play this morning, I found this, and I thought, this is wonderful, and it's from Terry Fryman. She has gone through a serious illness, she is recovered, and she's back at the Presbyterian Church
Oh, great. That's good to
both
hear.
organ and piano. And so I called her yesterday to tell her I was going to play this. So is she at church this morning. And that was just, well, I don't know what you call it, a fluke?
A coincidence?
A what?
A coincidence?
A coincidence,
Yes.
but she was thrilled that I was playing it, and I was thrilled that she's playing
Well,
it.
maybe there's a spiritual connection there that we're not aware of yet.
That's right.
Thank you, Roberta. Music is a blessing, as are the hands that produced it and play it. Let's go back to our message today. I've tried to teach myself to play piano. You know, when you think about every note that you play, it doesn't sound very good. So think about, you look at those notes and your hands play the notes, you're not consciously thinking any of that. So there is something to this thing of subliminal or subconscious or muscle memory. I'm not sure what to call it. But your conscious brain is not really in control like we think it is control. All right, that ends our service, First Universalist in New Madison. I hope you gathered something beneficial from it. I hope you'll share that with other people. And if you need anything, please let us know. We're here to help. So, have a good Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the day. And we have cupcakes left over from Easter.